Two houses, a pipe bursts in both. Same water, opposite outcomes. The first house was built in 1450, mud and straw walls. The second was built in 2015, modern drywall, code compliant. In the medieval house, the walls dry in 3 days. In the modern house, black mold grows in 48 hours. The wall has to be cut out and replaced. 700-year-old mud walls surviving what 10-year-old drywall cannot. Same water. Why? Before we continue, I want to thank everyone who is always here, commenting, liking and sharing. It is because of you that this kind of content is possible. This episode was sponsored by the channel's members and supporters. If you would like to support too, and even have a video dedicated to you, become a member. It is simple and it makes all the difference. What I am about to show you will change how you think about every wall in your house. Section 1. Why drywall drowns? Let's be clear about something up front. Drywall is not a bad material. It revolutionized construction after World War II. It made housing fast and affordable when millions of soldiers came home and needed places to live. But drywall was designed for a very specific world. A world where houses are climate-controlled year-round, where humidity stays between 30 and 50%, where pipes never leak and roofs never fail. That world does not exist. Drywall is made of gypsum plaster sandwiched between 2 sheets of paper. Gypsum is a mineral, calcium sulfate. It is soft, easy to shape, and sets hard when mixed with water, perfect for creating smooth, flat walls quickly. The problem is what happens after installation. Gypsum is hygroscopic. That means it absorbs water from the air, and the paper backing on both sides of the drywall is even worse. Paper is made from wood pulp. It is basically compressed cellulose, and cellulose loves water. So when humidity spikes or when water touches drywall from a leak, the paper absorbs it immediately. The gypsum core absorbs it, and here is the critical part. They hold onto it. Drywall does not breathe. It does not release moisture back into the air easily. It traps it, and trapped moisture creates the perfect environment for mold. Studies show that mold can begin growing on wet drywall in as little as 24 to 48 hours. Within a week, you can have a full-blown mold colony spreading through your wall cavity. The industry will tell you this is a maintenance problem. They will say you need to fix leaks immediately, keep humidity low, run dehumidifiers, and they are right. If you do all those things, drywall works fine. But that is not how medieval builders thought. They did not design walls for perfect conditions. They designed walls for the worst conditions. Because in 1350, you did not have a dehumidifier. You did not have central heating that kept walls dry. You had rain, snow, flooding, and no way to control indoor humidity. So they built walls that could handle moisture. Walls that absorbed water when it came and released it when conditions improved. Walls that did not die the first time they got wet. Medieval walls were designed for reality. Drywall was designed for an ideal that rarely exists. And when that ideal fails, which it does every time a pipe bursts or a roof leaks, drywall fails catastrophically. It does not gradually degrade. It does not warn you. It just grows mold, loses structural integrity, and has to be torn out and replaced. 85% of homes in the United States will experience water damage at some point. That is not a design flaw in houses. That is reality. Things leak, and when they do, your walls should be able to survive it. Medieval walls did, for centuries. Before we go deeper, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to replace drywall because of water damage? Let us know, because what you are about to discover explains why it keeps happening. Section 2. Walls that breathe. Let's talk about wattle-and-daub, the construction method that sounds primitive but has outlasted almost everything we build today. Wattle-and-daub has been used for at least 6,000 years. The ancient Egyptians used it, the Romans used it, medieval Europeans used it, and if you walk through the English countryside today, you will find houses with original wattle-and-daub walls that are 700 years old, still standing, still functional, still dry. The Tudor house in Southampton was built between 1491 and 1518, 534 years ago. Its walls are wattle-and-daub. You can tour it today. The walls are solid, 700-year-old mud walls, outlasting your 10-year-old drywall. How? The construction is almost absurdly simple. You start with a timber frame, vertical posts, and horizontal beams that carry the weight of the building. Between those timbers, you weave thin branches, usually hazel or willow, flexible woods that can be bent and woven like a basket. This woven lattice is called the wattle. It looks like a fence, gaps between the branches, light shining through. Not a wall yet, just a framework. Then you make the daub. This is where it gets interesting. Daub is a mixture of 3 types of ingredients: binders, aggregates, and reinforcement. The binder is usually clay, sometimes lime, sometimes both. Clay particles are microscopic. When wet, they slide past each other. When dry, they lock together. This gives the wall its structure. The aggregate is whatever is local: sand, crushed chalk, small stones, subsoil dug straight from the ground. This bulks up the mixture and gives it dimensional stability so it does not shrink too much when it dries. The reinforcement is straw, sometimes hay, sometimes animal hair, even dung, which sounds disgusting, but works because the fibrous plant material in dung acts like rebar in concrete. It holds the mixture together and prevents cracking as it dries. You mix this by hand or by stomping on it. Medieval builders would often use oxen to trample the mixture, breaking up clumps and blending everything thoroughly. Then you take handfuls of this wet daub and press it into the wattle from both sides. You fill the gaps, you compress it, you smooth it, and then you let it dry. What happens next is the key to why these walls last. As the daub dries, the clay particles interlock. The straw creates a fibrous matrix. The lime, if present, begins to carbonate, turning back into limestone. You end up with a wall that is porous, full of microscopic air channels. This porosity is not a flaw, it is the design. When moisture enters the wall, either from rain soaking through or from humidity inside the house, the clay absorbs it. But unlike drywall, which traps moisture, daub releases it. The porous structure allows water vapor to move through the wall and evaporate. It is like the difference between a sponge and a plastic bag. A sponge can get wet and dry out. A plastic bag just holds water. Medieval builders did not have the vocabulary to explain this. They did not know the words hygroscopic or vapor permeability. But they knew from centuries of trial and error that walls made this way did not rot. There is a technical term for this: breathable construction. The wall breathes. It takes in moisture and releases it. It equalizes with the environment instead of fighting it. And here is the thing. This is not slow. When a wattle and daub wall gets wet, it dries faster than drywall, because the moisture can move through the entire thickness of the wall. Drywall, with its paper backing and gypsum core, traps moisture between layers. Daub lets it pass through. In moderate conditions, a well-maintained wattle and daub panel can last indefinitely, not decades, not centuries, indefinitely. Conservation experts in England have documented panels that are over 700 years old, original material, still doing its job. Compare that to drywall, which needs replacement every 30 to 70 years in ideal conditions and every 10 to 20 years in humid climates or after water damage. We replaced a wall system that could last forever with a wall system that dies in a generation, and we call this progress. If this is making you rethink construction, hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next is even better. Section 3. The self-healing stone. Medieval stone walls are still standing all over Europe. Castles, churches, manor houses. Some of them are over 800 years old. Salford Manor in Somerset, England, was built around 1148, 877 years ago. Its stone walls are original. The mortar holding those stones together is original. 877 years. Your house was probably built in the last 50. How long do you think your walls will last? The secret is not the stone. Stone is durable no matter what. The secret is the mortar, and medieval masons understood something about mortar that modern engineers forgot. Medieval mortar was made from lime, not Portland cement. Lime. Here is how it worked. You take limestone, calcium carbonate, you heat it in a kiln to about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 870 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the calcium carbonate breaks down. The carbon dioxide gas is driven off, and you are left with quicklime calcium oxide. Quicklime is caustic, dangerous. If you add water to it, It heats up violently and turns into lime putty, calcium hydroxide. This is your binder. You mix the lime putty with sand, usually 3 parts sand to 1 part lime. This is your mortar. You use it to lay stone. When lime mortar is first applied, it is soft, workable. But as it sits in the wall, exposed to air, something happens. The calcium hydroxide in the mortar absorbs carbon dioxide from the air, slowly, over months or years, and it turns back into calcium carbonate, back into limestone. Your mortar becomes stone, not as hard as the original limestone, but hard enough, and more importantly, flexible enough. This is the key. Lime mortar is softer than most building stones. This is intentional. Buildings move, foundations settle, walls shift, temperature changes cause expansion and contraction. In a stone wall, something has to give. Either the stones crack or the mortar cracks. Medieval masons made sure it was the mortar. Lime mortar is sacrificial. It is designed to be the weakest link. When stress occurs, the mortar cracks instead of the stones. And here is where it gets interesting. When lime mortar cracks, it can heal itself. There is always a small amount of uncarbonated lime in the mortar, free lime. When a crack forms, water enters. That water dissolves the free lime. The dissolved lime migrates into the crack, and when it dries, it recrystallizes. The crack seals, not completely, not instantly, but over time, small cracks in lime mortar can close up. The wall heals. Drywall does not do this. Portland cement does not do this. Once they crack, they stay cracked. Now, here is the tragedy. In the 1800s, Portland cement was invented. It was marketed as an upgrade, stronger, faster setting, better in every way, and it is stronger, much stronger. Portland cement is harder than most stones, which sounds good until you realize what that means. When a wall with Portland cement mortar experiences stress, the mortar does not crack, the stones crack, because the mortar is harder than the stones. Historic stone buildings all over Europe were repointed with Portland cement in the 1900s. People thought they were preserving the buildings. They were destroying them. The hard cement trapped moisture. It did not breathe like lime mortar. It did not flex, and it slowly fractured the stones. Conservation organizations have spent decades trying to undo this damage, removing Portland cement and replacing it with lime mortar, because lime mortar, the primitive material, protects the building. Portland cement, the advanced material, kills it. Medieval masons made mortar weaker on purpose. Modern engineers made it stronger and accidentally made buildings weaker. They fixed a problem that did not exist and created one that does. Section 4. The thermal battery. Let's talk about cob, not the corn, the building material. Cob is a mixture of clay-rich subsoil, sand, straw and water. You mix it by stomping on it. Then you build walls by piling it up in layers, letting each layer dry before adding the next. Cob buildings started appearing in England around the 1400s, Devon, Cornwall, Wales, anywhere that had clay soil and not much wood or stone. These were not fancy buildings. They were peasant cottages, farm buildings, working structures, but many of them are still standing, 500 years later, and they have a property that modern walls do not have: thermal mass. A typical cob wall is about 24 inches thick. That is 61 centimeters. Compare that to a modern insulated wall, which might be 6 inches thick, 15 centimeters. That thickness is not just insulation. It is mass, weight, and mass stores heat. Here is how it works. During the day, the sun shines on the cob wall, or the fire inside the house heats the air, which heats the wall. The wall absorbs this heat. The thick clay matrix soaks it up like a battery. But clay is not a great conductor. It does not transfer heat quickly. So the heat moves slowly through the wall, very slowly. It can take 8 to 12 hours for heat to move from one side of a cob wall to the other. This is called thermal lag. At night, when the air temperature drops, the wall is still warm. It has been absorbing heat all day. Now it releases that heat back into the room, slowly, over hours. In the morning, the interior wall is cool because it has been radiating heat all night. But as the day warms up, the cycle repeats. The result is a building that stays cool in the day and warm at night. Passive climate control, no electricity, no moving parts, just physics. Medieval peasants living in cob cottages did not have central heating. They had a fire, maybe, and the thermal mass of their walls smoothed out the temperature swings. The house did not get as hot during the day and did not get as cold at night. Modern walls do not do this. Drywall is half an inch thick, about 1 centimetre. It has almost no mass. It stores almost no heat. Modern insulation stops heat transfer, which is good, but it does not store heat. So your house temperature is entirely dependent on your heating and cooling system. When the heater turns off, the house cools down immediately. When the air conditioning turns off, the house heats up immediately. You have to keep the systems running constantly to maintain comfort. That is not efficiency. That is dependence. Cob walls are slow to heat up. That is a downside if you want instant warmth. But they are also slow to cool down. In a world without electricity, that slowness was a feature, not a bug. Now, I am not suggesting you build a cob house. Cob construction is labour-intensive. It requires skilled workers. It takes months to complete. But the principle matters. Thermal mass stabilizes temperature. Modern construction ignores thermal mass in favour of insulation and mechanical systems. We traded a passive system that worked for free for an active system that requires constant energy input. Medieval peasants had walls that helped them stay comfortable. You have walls that make you dependent on your HVAC system. And when the power goes out, their walls still worked. Yours do not. Section 5. What we traded. Here is the uncomfortable truth. We did not upgrade from medieval walls. We made a trade. Medieval wall systems, whether wattle-and-daub, lime mortar or cob, had clear advantages. Durability, centuries, not decades. Repairability, a cracked wall could be patched. Breathability, moisture moved through the wall instead of getting trapped. Thermal mass, the wall helped regulate temperature, but they also had clear disadvantages. Speed, a wattle-and-daub wall took weeks to build. A stone wall with lime mortar took months. Cob construction could take a year. Labour, you needed skilled craftspeople, people who knew how to mix daub, how to weave wattle, how to work lime. Weight, a cob wall 24 inches thick is incredibly heavy. You need a solid foundation, possibly a stone footing. Aesthetics, let's be honest, mud walls are not smooth. They bulge, they crack, they look rough. After World War II, the United States and Europe needed millions of houses. Fast, soldiers were coming home, families were forming. The demand was enormous. Drywall made that possible. A crew can install drywall in a house in a few days. It requires almost no skill. Cut to size, screw to studs, tape the seams, apply joint compound, sand smooth. Done. You can train someone to install drywall in a week. The materials are cheap. Gypsum is mined all over the world. Paper is made from wood pulp. Both are industrial products, mass-produced, standardized. Drywall is light. You do not need reinforced foundations. You do not need thick walls. You can build bigger spaces with less material. And drywall is smooth, perfectly flat, ready for paint. It gives you the clean modern aesthetic people wanted. For post-war housing, drywall was the right choice. It solved the problem of the time. How do you house millions of people quickly and affordably? The problem is that we kept using drywall after the emergency ended. We kept using it in climates where it struggles. We kept using it in situations where medieval techniques would work better. We made drywall the universal solution, and it is not. Medieval builders did not have one universal wall system. They used different techniques for different situations. Wattle and daub for flexibility and speed in timber-framed houses. Cob for rural buildings in areas with clay soil. Lime mortar and stone for prestige buildings and structures that needed to last. Each technique matched the context. We lost that nuance. We decided drywall works everywhere, and then we built mechanical systems, climate control, moisture barriers, and ventilation to make drywall work in places it was never designed for. We did not upgrade. We just shifted the complexity from the wall to the systems. And when those systems fail, which they do, the walls fail with them. Medieval walls did not depend on anything. They just worked. Section 6. The Quiet Revival. Here is the good news. The knowledge did not die. It is uncommon, but it is still here. In England, there is a company called the Yorkshire Lime Company. They specialise in traditional lime mortar. They repair historic buildings, stone walls, cob cottages, anything built before 1900. They do not just repair, they teach. Workshops on how to mix lime mortar, how to apply it, how to match the original materials, because every historic building is slightly different, and you need to understand the principles, not just follow a recipe. In the United States, there is a natural building movement. People building cob houses, straw bale houses, earthen structures, not as historical reenactment, as modern homes. In Oregon, a man named Eonto Evans spent decades refining cob construction techniques. He built a 2-story cob house in the 1990s. It has plumbing, electricity, modern conveniences, but the walls are cob, 24-inch thick thermal mass. In Worcestershire, England, a house called Cobtoon House was completed in 2001, 4 bedrooms, modern design. But the exterior walls are cob, 1 metre thick. That is 3 feet. The house cost £300,000 to build, but the cob walls themselves only cost £20,000. The rest was normal construction. Roof, windows, interior finishes. Cobtoon House won the Royal Institute of British Architects Sustainable Building of the Year Award in 2005. Not because it was primitive, because it was smart. A modern house built with a medieval material that outperformed modern walls in energy efficiency and durability. In 2012, it achieved LEED Platinum certification, one of the highest scores by percentage ever recorded. Cob is not historical. It is viable. The same is true for lime mortar. Conservation groups across Europe are training new masons in lime work. Historic buildings require it for restoration. If you repair a limestone castle with Portland cement, you damage it. You have to use lime. And as people learn lime work, they realize it is not harder than cement. It is just different. It requires patience. You cannot rush lime. But the results are beautiful, and they last. Wattle-and-daub is also being taught. Heritage organisations like the Weald and Downland Museum in England run courses. They teach you to harvest hazel, to weave wattle, to mix and apply daub. People are learning these skills, not many, but enough. The knowledge is uncommon, not lost. Section 7. Which wall for what? So what does this mean for you? I am not telling you to tear out your drywall. I am not telling you to build a cob house. I am saying that when you build new, or when you renovate old, you have choices, and those choices matter. If you are restoring a historic building, you should use historic materials. If the building has lime mortar, repair it with lime, not cement. If it has wattle and daub, repair it with wattle and daub, not drywall. This is not about aesthetics, it is about compatibility. Modern materials damage old buildings. If you are building in a humid climate, or in a place where water intrusion is common, breathable walls make sense. Lime plaster, clay plaster, materials that can handle moisture without growing mold. If you are building off-grid, or in a place with extreme temperature swings, thermal mass makes sense. Cob, adobe, rammed earth, thick walls that store heat and cool. If you are building fast, on a budget, in a controlled environment, drywall makes sense. It is cheap, it is quick, and if you keep the house dry and climate controlled, it works fine. The point is not that one system is always better. The point is that different systems are better for different situations. Medieval builders understood this. We forgot it. There are hybrid approaches too. You can use lime plaster over a drywall substrate. You get the smooth finish of drywall with the breathability of lime. You can use vapor-permeable insulation and breathable paints in modern construction. You can design buildings that are less dependent on mechanical systems. These are not fringe ideas. They are happening. Architects and builders who understand building science are incorporating these principles into new construction. The challenge is that most builders do not know these techniques. They were not taught in trade schools. They are not in the building codes. And because they are uncommon, they are more expensive. But that is changing, slowly, as energy costs rise, as people realize that disposable construction creates disposable buildings, as climate change makes humidity and temperature swings more extreme, the advantages of traditional materials become obvious. Medieval walls were not perfect, but they solved problems that modern walls still struggle with. And now you know that those solutions exist. Building with MEMI. When a pipe bursts in a 700-year-old house, the walls dry out. When a pipe bursts in a 10-year-old house, the walls grow mold. Not because medieval is magic, because medieval builders designed for the world as it is, where things leak, where humidity spikes, where buildings move. They built walls that could handle reality, walls that breathed, walls that flexed, walls that healed. We replaced those with drywall, a material that works perfectly in ideal conditions and fails catastrophically when conditions are not ideal. Then we built mechanical systems to create those ideal conditions. We made buildings dependent on constant energy input just to stay functional. That is not progress. That is substitution. But the knowledge is not lost. There are builders who still know lime mortar, craftspeople who still build with cob, companies bringing back traditional materials. Every medieval building standing today is proof. Durability is possible. Buildings that work with the environment, not against it, are possible. Your house will probably have drywall. That is reality. But now you know there is another way. They built walls that remember, that adapt, that endure. We built walls that forget, that trap, that fail. But we are starting to remember. And once you remember, you cannot forget. Medieval walls were not primitive, they were perfected. We are the ones who forgot. Subscribe, and let's keep uncovering what they buried.